Valyrian Steel. I always wanted some Valyrian Steel.
Valar Morghulis and Valar Morgorgeous, back with another Game of Thrones sword review. This time it's Oathkeeper by Valyrian Steel. It was recently my brother's birthday, and seeing as how he's a huge Game of Thrones fan, and his favorite character is Brienne of Tarth, his present this year was a no-brainer. Happy birthday, bro! The blade comes in the same style box as Longclaw did, packed in secure styrofoam with a glossy slipcover over top of it. It includes a short bio on the back, as well as measurement and material specifications. As with Longclaw, Oathkeeper includes a wall mount plaque featuring the Tarth sigil. The wear and tear on the paint job is intentional. The plaque was packed safely and separately from the sword and arrived in pristine condition. And like with Longclaw, you get these two fancy pegs to hang the sword onto the plaque with. I do appreciate that Valyrian Steel went to the effort of making even the pegs fancy, when they could have easily included just some standard hooks or bolts to save cost. When a sword is as beautiful as Oathkeeper, it deserves just as beautiful a display mount. You'll also get this little pamphlet featuring other Game of Thrones prop replicas from Valyrian Steel. Alright, onto the mighty blade itself.
Magnificent.
This particular version of Oathkeeper is a replica of the one used on the HBO series.
Where did you get this much Valyrian steel?
From someone who no longer had need of it.
After the death of Robb Stark, the Valyrian steel blade ice is melted down and reforged into two swords. The larger blade Oathkeeper, which was given to Jaime Lannister.
We've wanted one of these in the family for a long time.
And now we have two.
Two?
And the smaller runt of a sword called Widow's Wail, given to that runt of a king, that human piece of garbage, Joffrey Lannister. Being that it's a Lannister sword, the hilt is extremely fancy.
Fancy sword you got there. Tell me that's not Lannister gold.
It features the Lannister sigil on each point, the head of a golden lion, as well as gems in the middle of the hilt.
I've never seen Valyrian steel before. She's a beauty.
The material used on the hilt looks more like brass than gold, which I think suits the sword better. A sword can be a beautiful work of art, but it's primarily intended to be a weapon. I don't think this design would work as well if the hilt was shiny chrome gold. The fingerprints would really ruin the aesthetic, I think. Plus, you get plenty of shininess from the blade itself. Like Longclaw, the quality of the blade itself is superb. Straight and smooth with no imperfections. You can see here the quality of the forging of the blade. It catches the light beautifully and there's no warping whatsoever. This is a very high-end replica with a lot of craftsmanship put into it.
There are 3 living smiths who know how to rework Valyrian steel. The finest of them was in Volantis. He came here to King's Landing at my invitation.
The edge of the blade hasn't been sharpened, so you don't have to worry about cutting yourself. Or anyone else.
If you fight with an edge blade, I'll have to. And if I fight with an edge blade, I'll have no one left to pay me.
It is pretty heavy though, so it might result in blunt force trauma if you're not careful. The gems in the hilt are really well done. Each side features a simulated red ruby surrounded by 4 tiny pearls. I like that they didn't go overboard on the gems. The design could have easily ended up being a gem-encrusted mess, but the bottom line is that it's still a weapon, and a sword needs to look more intimidating than dainty. Here's a closer look at the gems used on the hilt. Again, very subtle, but very effective. Less is more. The ruby glows a nice deep red when light is cast onto it. The cuts on the ruby aren't sharp, and none of the sculpting on the hilt is sharp either. It's practical. You're not going to cut or scratch yourself while you're handling the hilt. They've added a bit of a black wash to the hilt to give it a used look, so it's not the freshly forged sword that was handed to Jaime Lannister by his father Tywin.
Looks fresh forged.
You do.
It's got some wear and tear on it from kicking the hound's ass. Although the sword was specifically created for Jaime Lannister,
Well, thank you. It's glorious.
he doesn't hold on to it for very long. After losing his right hand and not having much luck training with his left, he decides to give the sword to Brienne of Tarth.
Valyrian Steel.
It's yours.
And task her with protecting Ned Stark's daughter, Sansa.
I can't
It was
accept.
reforged from Ned Stark's sword. You'll use it to defend Ned Stark's daughter.
Every good blade needs a name, and Brienne comes up with one that perfectly suits her sense of honor and chivalry.
They say the best swords have names. Any ideas?
Oathkeeper.
Just like with Longclaw, Oathkeeper has a little info stamp right above the hilt on one side, featuring the product name, serial number, and country of manufacturing. This is the side that'll obviously be facing the wall when it's hanging on your wall mount. This really is a beautiful display piece. There's some really wonderful designs in the Game of Thrones show, and Valyrian Steel is definitely doing them justice with these replicas. The sword has some heft to it. You don't need to be a powerlifter by any means to hold it, but it does have some bulk to it, which makes it feel powerful. And no, it's not a katana blade. It's not perfectly balanced at the tip of the hilt. This thing is designed for power, not precision. Remember, this is a replica, not an actual weapon. Resist the urge to challenge your friends to sword fights. Use a nerfed sword instead. This isn't just a typical sword. In Game of Thrones, it's forged from Valyrian Steel, which has mystical properties that play into the later seasons of Game of Thrones. I think the design of the sword perfectly matches both of its owners. And it's not just about the look of the sword, it has a great pedigree as well. Oathkeeper possesses the lineage of Ice, the sword of Ned Stark. And it's also the sword that defeated one of the greatest warriors in Game of Thrones, the Hound.
I have no wish to kill you, sir.
And it also slayed one of the biggest shitheads, Stannis Baratheon.
I, Brienne of Tarth, sentence you to die.
Go and do your duty.
If you're a huge Game of Thrones fan, Oathkeeper will definitely be the gem of your collection. It's available on ValyrianSteel.com. Leave a comment below, share if you like the video, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Valar Morgorgeous.